Now I want to touch on a candidate key just in a real short video because you're going to hear about these and you're going to read about them out there in the documentation all over the place. And you'll see these mentioned from time to time, even in Microsoft's documentation, although you don't tend to see it as much on the Microsoft side. But a candidate key is one of those things that sounds complicated and sounds impressive. One of the best ways to use this is to intimidate those non-databasers that you find yourself around. This can be management people or in-laws or people like that. But the bottom line with a candidate key, the biggest thing that the candidate key reflects is the importance of choosing that primary key, because notice the definition of a candidate key here. It is a column or columns, meaning a group of columns, that you can use to ensure unique rows in a table. And I can hear some of you guys and ladies yelling at your monitor saying, wait a minute, that's what you said a primary key was. So this sounds somewhat familiar. And if you go back and watch the primary key video, that is exactly what I said. So as it turns out, a candidate key are the various keys that you identified when you were looking for your primary key. But for one reason or another, you did not choose it as your primary key. So these are the guys who, in American Idol terms, got voted off. They didn't quite make the cut. Now here's the deal. This really does indicate the importance of that primary key, because one of the things that you will learn as you develop more and more databases is how vitally important it is to get that primary key right the first time on those tables. And so what you want to do is go through and identify each one of the columns or combination of columns that you can use as your primary key to ensure that you don't get duplicate rows. Now, you will learn from experience that such things as Social Security numbers here in the United States really don't make good candidates for primary keys. You have privacy issues, number one, but number two, we assume that Social Security numbers are unique for every individual in the country. And I don't want to shock and disillusion you about government efficiency, but they do from time to time issue duplicate Social Security numbers to different people. And so, yeah, it's rare, but you know Murphy's Law. And it's always going to happen that on a Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock, you hire a new employee, you put them in, and you start having problems with human resource records and so forth because this person has a duplicate Social Security number with somebody else in your company. But you learn all kinds of things, little secrets, but in the process of designing your tables and designing the functionality, you identified a number of possible primary keys in your table, and you chose one, and the ones you didn't choose were candidate keys. Now, you may use those a little bit later on as you get into more complex data design scenarios and you're joining tables on columns that aren't necessarily primary keys. And these are other columns that you want to enforce uniqueness for lots of various reasons, and we won't dig into them now. But I just wanted you to hear about a candidate key, know what it was. It looks really important when you read about it in some of the documentation, but just know it comes down to, it's an oversimplified way of saying it, but it's the primary key candidates that didn't actually get used for the primary key.